Welcome to this week's edition of Black Authors Matter TV, where we interview the latest movers and shakers in the African American literary community. You'll meet some old friends, discover new ones, and stay abreast of the latest book developments around the country and even the world. So sit back and relax for the next 2 hours with Black Authors Matter TV co-hosts Gwen Richardson and Dr. Rhonda Lawson.
Good evening. It's Black Authors Matter TV. Once again, it's February 28th, and welcome to the show. I'm Gwen Richardson, your host for tonight, along with my co-host,
Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Good evening, everyone.
And we have a very exciting show for you once again. Our first guest, unfortunately, was unable to participate. She notified us earlier today. So our first segment is going to be filled with information for you all. We're going to be giving away 4 books this week instead of 2. And we're going to be giving you some updates on all the things we have coming up in the next few months. So first, we're going to have Dr. Rhonda Lawson talk about her amazing Black History Weekend that she's still recovering from.
Yes,
and I know how that is, the recovery process. But she's just going to give us an update on everything that happened. I saw some of the pictures and videos and all that. If you all follow her on Instagram, and Facebook, she was posting. So Rhonda, give us an update.
Well, first of all, it was an amazing event. We even had a couple of people from Black Authors Matter TV, some of our supporters who showed up. So that was awesome. So the event started on the 23rd. 2 of the authors, Shanitha Burton and Shartia Love Jones, went over to a preschool in Columbia, Maryland, and read to the kids. And the kids loved it. They were cheering, raising their hands, responding. So that wound up being a beautiful event. And then on Friday, we visited 2 high schools. So part of the group, we had 8 authors altogether. So we sent 6 authors over to Richard Wright Public Charter School in Washington, D.C. And then our guest speaker, Miss Lisa McNair, as well as one of our authors, Mark Bolsajor, and myself, we went over to Paint Branch High School, which is located in Burtonsville, Maryland. So that wound up being a great event because it was, you never know with kids, especially with teenagers, whether they're going to be engaged. So I introduced myself, told them a bit about myself and my company, and then I introduced the authors. And I said, how many of you have heard of the Birmingham church bombing in 1963? And a few people raised their hands. And how many of you know about the 4 little girls who were killed in the explosion? A few people raised their hands. I said, well, one of those girls was Denise McNair. And this lady right here is her sister. And all of a sudden, it was a collective in the audience. It was beautiful. So that
by the way, for the audience, she was on the show a few months ago with her book about her sister. That was really, it's like a tearjerker type interview.
It was. And there were a couple of moments when she was talking about her sister and the process of writing the book, where she did get a little choked up, and I can understand why. But she got through it. The kids were inspired. Many of them came up and shook her hand. And then there was an older man in the back of the audience, 85 years old. And he said he remembered that incident. He said, I was about 25 years old when that happened. And I just want to thank you for telling your story. So you just never know who's in the audience and who's hearing your story.
So how did he say how he found out about it? Was he affiliated with the school or? He's
affiliated with the school.
Okay. Yeah.
So he had been at the school for a very long time. So he came with the kids. Said Richard Wright, the authors broke up into groups, and 2 people went to 3 different classrooms. So there were 3 classrooms, and we had 2 authors in each classroom. But at Paint Branch, they brought all of the students together. So there were about 300 students in the auditorium. for Miss Lisa to speak to. So that wound up being a really good experience for her. And then they invited us to lunch afterward. They bought us lunch, so that was nice too.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
how did you go about, I'm interviewing you. How did you go about arranging all that with the schools? You just
Well, I
know
actually
somebody?
Well, I partnered with some people. So one of my sorority sisters assisted me with getting one high school. And then I reached out to another lady who has a program called Books Breaking Borders. And her program is all about eradicating illiteracy.
Mhm.
So when I found out about her program, I reached out to her and asked her if she would like to partner with me for the Black History Month Literary Weekend. So she actually helped me to get quite a few contacts, and we were able to get her book donations for her foundation. So it wound up being a really good partnership. So
Okay.
and we now that night on the night of that, because Friday was a long day. So on the
Yeah.
night of Friday night, we went to Barnes and Noble and we had a nice book chat there and then a book signing. So we did the book chat for about an hour and then we broke the authors into different parts of the bookstore.
Mhm, I saw
And
those pictures. They're nice pictures.
yes,
Mhm.
yeah, we had a great time there. And so people were coming in and out. There are some students from Bowie State because Bowie State's not very far from Barnes and Noble. So they came out and supported for a little while as well. And then we went and had dinner that night, and there was a live band there. The authors got up, danced, and let off some steam, and we ate. Mark said he liked the food at the high school better than he did at the restaurant.
Oh, that's different. That's
Right.
different.
And then the following day was the Ivory and Cream Affair, and that wound up being a really great event. We had a very good turnout, despite the fact that we were competing against CIAA, Beyonce tickets, the NAACP Image Awards, Mardi Gras, but we still were able to get a good turnout. And we awarded our essay contest winners. When I gave them your book, I can hear the parents saying, yes, yes, we need that. So they
Well,
really
glad I was
appreciated
able to
that.
help. I'm glad I was able to help. So on your brunch, that's the one that's the cream and what is it?
The Ivory and Cream Affair.
Ivory and cream.
Yes, we had a
And that's
live
the one.
band. We had a
Okay.
3-course meal. As I said, we awarded our essay contest winners. We had an auction with prizes. And, we had so much going on. We still have a few things that we need to do. So we're going to have a virtual party tomorrow night on Facebook Live. And so I've invited the authors to come out. We're going to just have a good time. And we're going to premiere some movies because we had a couple of movie premieres that we weren't able to get to.
Okay.
So we're going to premiere those during the event. We're also going to do a couple more prizes during the event. So we're going to have a good time. We won't keep people very long, probably about an hour or so, but we just want to be able to continue to celebrate Black History Month and continue to celebrate these authors who took the time to come out here to Washington, D.C. and network, sell books, socialize. And I think it was a pretty successful weekend altogether.
Okay. So when you do your live on Facebook tomorrow,
Mhm.
is it on Meet the World Image Solutions?
Yes, it will be on the Meet the World Image Solutions page on Facebook. And we'll, of course, share it out. So everybody will put it on their page, so everybody will have a chance to see it. But like I said, it's going to be a good time. Just one more day celebration of Black History Month, since today is actually the last day.
This is the very last day of Black
Yeah.
History Month. Okay, so I have several announcements and we have some books to give away. So first, the National Black Book Festival registrations for vendors is open. We're in our early bird registration phase, which ends March 31st. That's how you get the best rate and the best terms. So if you're an author and you want to participate, selling your books, promoting it, meeting all the awesome people that come,
Yes.
participating in some amazing free workshops, then please sign up. And we expect to have a very, very our best turnout in group of authors yet. And this will be year 16. It's very exciting. So
Can't believe it's been that long.
I know it has gone by fast, but
It really has.
It's been a lot that's occurred. And we've had, as far as the featured authors, we've had just about everybody who's, really selling books and doing well selling books in the industry. So my next announcement is about the winners of the NAACP Image Awards in literary, for outstanding literary work. 3 of them, I want to congratulate all of the winners, but 3 of the finalists we interviewed on this show, and 2 of them won. So the 3 finalists this year that we interviewed, and I have one of the books here, Take My Hand, Dolan Perkins Valdez.
Yes.
And she actually won in her category. I think her category was fiction. I'm pretty sure it was. And this is a really good book. For those who haven't read it, I read it. This is a very good book. And then George McCalman, he has the book, the Black Illustrated Black History. He was on the show a few months ago. He won in his category, which was the debut author category. And then Boya Farah, whose book was called America Made Me a Black Man, he was a finalist. He didn't win in his category, but he was originally from Somalia. I'm pretty sure it was Somalia. And his book was a memoir, and he was a finalist also. So if you want to see their interviews, I separated them out as separate files. So you don't have to go through the show to find where they are. Go to the archive video section of this page, of the National Black Book Festival's page, and then just look for their names on the video. And then you'll be able to see their individual video, because they tell you the impetus behind the book and all of that. And they all were interviewed in the last several months. So the interviews have been fairly recent. So I also want to tell people about the Black Authors Matter TV Awards that we do every year. The last show for inclusion in this batch of awards is going to be next week's show. So everybody from March 8th of 2022, that show, till March 7th, the March 7th show this year, will be included in the process. There'll be a similar number of categories. It's going to be maybe 14, depending on how they break down. So the show itself will be, the closing show will be next week. The voting starts March 21st. And the first round of voting is to select 5 finalists in each of the categories. So that starts March 21st, and it ends roughly 3 weeks after that. And the other voting for the finalists is sometime in April. The show itself is on May 16th. So that will give you some sort of a lay of the land about what we have coming up. Then the Children's Book Awards that we do every year, we've renamed them the Black Authors Matter Children's Book Awards. And it's for branding purposes. We wanted everything to line up. So we have Black Authors Matter TV. We have Black Authors Matter t-shirts and other merchandise. And so we decided to name it the Black Authors Matter Children's Book Awards. So if you're interested in entering your book, the process has begun for submissions. It doesn't end until June. I think it's June 6th or 5th. It's sometime in early June. And if you go to Black Authors Matter bookawards.com, then all of the information is there if you want to submit your book.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I need to talk about is our book club kickback. And I need to go off camera 1 second just so I can get the book. I'll be right back. It's 3 or 4 seconds. Be right back. Uh,
So about that book club kickback, it's going to be a great event. Make sure you come out. We're going to have fun with it. I was trying to keep them entertained, so you got back.
well, thank you. I just wanted to get a copy of the book so everybody could see the book that we're reading. It's The House of Eve by Sadika Johnson. She will be on the show. And congratulations to Sadika. Her book made the New York Times bestsellers list 2 consecutive weeks. So the book just came out February 7th, and it made the list. So it's getting a lot of attention. I haven't started reading it yet because I want to be closer to the kickback when I read it, so everything's fresh in my mind. We will be giving away 3 autographed copies of the book. But in order to get those, and this is different from the books we normally give away, because when we give away books for the kickback, you have to have read the book.
Right.
Because the trivia comes from the plot, from the storyline. And if you didn't actually read the book, you won't be able to answer the questions. So keep that in mind. Don't wait too long to get started. I've heard really good things about it. Can't wait to get into it. And Sadika's really on a roll. She
really
has
is.
The Yellow Wife, and it just made a grand impact and got lots of publicity. And now we have this book for the kickback. So it's the book club kickback is for book clubs as far as being on the Zoom call. But the kickback is always live streamed. Anybody can participate in the Q&A part, and anybody can participate in winning the autographed books. So anybody who's watching can participate. And I believe that's it as far as announcements go. So now what we're going to do is we are going to give away these books. We have 4 books we're giving away tonight, and we have trivia for all 4 books. So we're going to start with Something Good by Vanessa Miller. And let's see. Yeah, there it is. There you go. This is a Christian fiction book. This is an actual book. I think all of these are books. Well, no, one of them is an advanced reading copy. So, but this one is actual book. So the trivia for this book is, for those of you who like to win books and you're listening, the main character in the book, Alexis Marshall, gets in an accident because she was doing something while she was driving. What was it? What did she do while she was driving that caused an accident? So if you answer that question correctly, you'll get a copy of Something Good by Vanessa Miller. Next, for our giveaway, this is a book by Iris Bowling. And all of these authors, I think every single author, they're mostly published. So these are books by multi-published authors, many books. They have many books. This is by Iris Bowling. It's called The Society of Intellectual Beings. And this is a mystery that she wrote. So the trivia for this one is Wade Tyson's parents. Wade Tyson is the main character. His parents were convicted of multiple murders. How many years ago? So how many years ago were his parents convicted of multiple murders?
That sounds like a good book already.
And, okay, did you put that one in the chat?
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right. Next we have, this is an advanced reading copy. This is the book called Destiny's Child, The Untold Story. It's by Matthew Knowles. We've given away a few Matthew Knowles books in the last month or so. Different ones. So this book, this is about the group Destiny's Child. And as you all know, Matthew Knowles is Beyonce's dad and a music executive and a professor and an author. He has 6 books, I think. So here's the question to win the advanced reading copy of Destiny's Child. Name one of the original Destiny's Child members whose last name was Roberson. So some people may not remember there are more, the three Destiny's Child people who really became famous before they settled on the three people. Beyonce was always going to be part of it, of course, but there were three other people who were in the original group, and one of them last name was Roberson. So what was her first name? She was a member of the original Destiny's Child group. And the final book that we're giving away tonight is, and we have several copies, so I'm going to be actually giving away some more copies of this book in the future. I have a few left. So this is a hard copy of The Family Business 2 by Carl Weber. So The Family Business Part 6 recently was released. So this is, but if you want to have some background on the story of the Duncan family, then this is a hardcover of number 2. So the question for this book is, by day, the Duncan family runs a high-end car dealership, but by night, they do something else. So what is it that they do by night? What is their night activity? So we have 4 books that we're giving away, and we've given you the trivia. Do you think we need to go over them again? Has anybody answered any of the questions?
Nobody's answered the question yet,
Yeah.
but Tony Benita says she has all of these books.
You have
already.
all. So she didn't need to answer the question. So let's see who's on. Let's see. Lydia's on. I know Reverend Vera Boyd. I don't remember her being on before, but we're excited about new people who tune in. Patricia Jackson, Gwen Hayes, she's saying good evening. She's always on. Tony Benita, and then Tony says she has all of the books. So, and Carlotta Griffin had not. She's been on before. So any of you all can win any of those books. I don't. Mary's normally on. I don't see her yet. She might.
Sometimes she runs a little late, but I'm sure she'll be on.
Mm-hmm. She might be tied up. And so what we're doing now, we're waiting on to see who is going to answer the trivia questions to win the books. But we also, our first guest wasn't able to come on. For those who tuned in late, the first guest canceled this morning. She said she had a personal matter. So once our second guest logs on, then we'll start that interview. And our second guest is Danielle Prescod. And so I don't know if you heard about her. She was part of a new program that Amazon created where they promote self-published authors. And so her book was called Token Black Girl, and it just, became a bestseller on Amazon through their program.
Nice.
There was an article about how her book just, blew up on Amazon, and it was her first, it's a memoir. And she's going to be on to tell us what, how she did it, what made her write the memoir, and how she's been doing since her breakthrough. Because, some people think being on Amazon means you're going to sell books, but
Right.
Amazon has millions of books, literally millions and millions of books. So in order to stand out, you have to do something different, or you have to have some publicity, you have to market yourself, you have to have something compelling. Sometimes you just get a lucky break, you need all kinds of breaks. There's an article about her, was on BET.com about her book. So they interviewed her about how the breakthrough she had on there. And it debuted in October. So she's done well since then. And so I thought it'd be interesting, since so many authors publish on Amazon,
Yeah,
to give her perspective on.
I'm sure people are going to want to know how she did it.
Yeah, she did it. And it sounds like she didn't necessarily do it by creating a sub category.
Yeah, they do try to make you go deep into those subs.
Yeah, if you write a book and your book is the only one, let's say your book is about horse habits from 1845, and there's only 2 books written on that topic, then you can be a bestseller if it's only 2 and you're in that category, because it's such a niche of a niche of a niche that. And that's, to me, that people will say they're a bestseller, but to me, you have to have broad support.
Right.
I mean, people can say things, but I think it's better if you have broad support, because then if you say you're a bestseller, people expect to have heard about you, or some evidence.
Well, that's why I don't believe everybody when they say they're best-selling. I mean, it's easy to just throw that tag onto your name.
It is. And if I don't call myself that, even though, I sell a lot of books, but I actually, one of my books was on the Essence list when they used to have the Essence bestseller.
Yeah.
One of them was, my first book was on there, but
we all wanted to be on that Essence bestseller list. I mean, that just felt like you did something.
Yeah. So I could use that, but I don't. So, because at first that was a long time ago. So we haven't had anybody try to win the books yet.
Yeah, Gwen. I mean, Gwen. She said that she was trying to get somebody else a chance, but she said that she's gonna try for the Vanessa Miller book, and she said texting.
Okay, well, that was the right answer. So let me put down Gwen Hayes for that book.
Yeah, Gwen Hayes is one of the people who came to the Ivory and Cream affair.
Oh, she did. Oh,
yeah, she did. Oh. And I thank her.
Yeah, because we saw her in Philly at the Zeta event. So I am normally our guest has logged in by now, and she hasn't. So do you want to text her or try calling the number that's on her?
Yeah, it's 8:30 already. I'm surprised.
Yeah, well, it's 28, and normally
close enough.
Yeah, they do log in 5 minutes ahead of time, which is what we asked them to do. They normally do that. So yeah, I was hoping she would be even earlier, since the first guest didn't come on, and hopefully she will respond too.
Let's see here. It's Danielle, right?
Danielle Prescod.
Yeah.
And Gwen Hayes said that the event was very nice.
Oh, thank you, Gwen. Both Gwens.
So for those of y'all who are just tuning in, Mary just came on. We are awaiting our second guest to log on, so for her interview, and she has a memoir called Token Black Girl. Her name is Danielle Prescod, and her book made the Amazon bestsellers list, and she was going to talk to us about it. So Rhonda has texted her. Did you get a response back?
Not yet.
Okay, hopefully it's text. So we do have three other books that we haven't given away yet. So I'm going to go ahead and until she comes on. Hopefully she'll log in. She did say she was going to be on. I communicate with these people, several times before the show. So we had 3 other books. We've given away one, and I'm going to just go over the trivia. Oh, there she is. She's logged on now, so I don't have to do that, and I can do it later. So we're going to welcome our next guest, Danielle Prescod, and she has a memoir called Token Black Girl, and the book is an Amazon bestseller. And we are excited to have her on the show to tell us all about her success with her book. And Danielle, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you for having me. Sorry, my voice is a little messed up because I'm sick, but
oh boy.
I know, but I don't have
drink
to
some tea. Drink some tea with honey or water, like lemon.
I know.
Well, on the bright side, your room is pretty.
Oh, this is my office.
And you don't look sick.
Concealer goes a long way.
There you go. Well, thank you for being with us tonight. And fighting through. We appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah, we really do. So your book came to my attention from one of the articles of the BET.com posted.
Okay.
And they had interviewed you about your book and your first time published author. Yeah. And your book quickly climbed the Amazon charts. And so tell us about, first, what led you to write Token Black Girl? Was it based on a particular situation or multiple situations that you've experienced? Or just tell us about that.
Sure. So I started working on the book in the beginning of 2020, and I have been in therapy for many years, but one thing that my therapist was really trying to get me to understand at the beginning of 2020 was she was like, you have a problem with self-love. You only love yourself conditionally. You love yourself if you have all these things lined up, and not just naturally as I wake up in the morning, right? I'm not wow, I'm just loving myself. And so I was I need to examine what the sources of my aversion to self-love might be. And so when I started to kind of work backwards, from first I had to accept. I was oh, come on, lady. I obviously love myself, and first I had to accept that I didn't really. And then once I did that, I was okay, let's try and work backwards and discover what these sources were. And every time I arrived at the conclusion that it was white supremacy, and just being engulfed in white supremacy, making me think that I'm not good enough, that anything I do is not good enough, that I need to have this kind of job, I need to make this amount of money, I need to be going to this school, I need to be a member of this club. And not only that, but once I get in there, I have to be the best at it, because everyone's always going to question whether or not I belong there.
Right.
So I was okay, let me see if I can figure out where I even got those ideas. And so a lot of the foundational principles that I had around the opposite of self-love, which is self-loathing, came from a childhood that really was just so indoctrinated in whiteness, and then an adolescence that was so indoctrinated in whiteness, and then an adulthood that was so indoctrinated in whiteness. And so I decided to write the book as a way to explore where those feelings emerged from in my life.
Wow. So you're growing up, did you grow up in a white neighborhood?
I actually didn't grow up in a white neighborhood. I grew up in a Black neighborhood, but I went to private school in white neighborhood. So, okay. Yeah.
I do understand that my daughter went to a very white private school for 3 years. She started off at a Black private school.
Uh-huh.
Then she went to, then that school shut down. So then she went to another school that for 1 year, but it was a little bit more diverse. It was white, but it was a little bit more diverse than the one she ended up at in middle school. Then she went to another school that was mostly Black, and then it ended up, well, it didn't shut down, but it should have shut down. I think it eventually did shut down. Anyway, it wasn't well managed. And then in middle school, she went to a white school. It was very white. So I can relate to what you're saying about that experience. And then after that, she said she wanted to go to an HBCU for college, and that was
See, that I was just going to say the same thing. My daughter also went to predominantly white schools for most of her life, for her young life.
Yeah.
And then her last 2 years of high school were in a predominantly Black school. And at first she was nervous because she had never gone to a predominantly Black school. So that was one thing. And so I thought that once she graduated, she was going to want to go back to what she was familiar with.
Sure.
But then she chose to go to an HBCU. So I think part of it is probably a nurturing thing, because when she was going to the predominantly white schools, not that the teachers were tougher on her, but I don't feel like often they took as much time with her. Her grades actually went up and her self-esteem went up when she was going to the predominantly Black schools. And then her grades stayed up when she went to the HBCU. So I think it's a bit, I don't know if that was your experience, but maybe it was just a bit more community that she was able to experience when she was surrounded by more people who looked like her.
Yeah.
Were you involved in like, did your family go to a Black church?
Oh, we're not religious. No.
Okay. But that is like a buffer too. And if that's not part of, when you're in those white settings, because I experienced that in college, going to Georgetown. And when I was there, it was like 2% Black. You have to have some kind of a buffer. You have to have some escape from the whiteness. Otherwise, it can really drive you crazy. And some of my classmates at Georgetown actually did have nervous breakdowns because it is not nurturing at all. It's like the opposite of nurturing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where did you end up going to college?
Well, I went to Tufts for a year and a half. And then I decided I did not like Boston and I went to NYU. So that's where I ended up graduating from.
Okay. All right. And then did you end up working in corporate?
I did. I worked in fashion magazines for many years. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a veteran of the fashion industry and beauty industry.
Yes. I put in 15 years.
and this, so did you, those years doing all that, you said you had been in therapy with, and then you finally, you realized where the source of your challenges, the things that you needed to overcome, the lack of self-love. And it's amazing. And I don't know if it's willful blindness. I think it is. But when you are Black in a white environment, it's difficult. It can really take your soul. Unless you have some kind of buffer, you have to have something.
Well, that was why I was going to ask Danielle is you said that this was a process and that when you went to therapy, this was something that you had to work through with her. Was this kind of a slow process, or did you wake up and say, wow, she's right?
Oh, no, I would say it was very slow. So mostly we were trying to heal me from my eating disorder, which I cover in the book. I was anorexic and then I was bulimic for a number of years, and it largely goes undiagnosed in Black women because, there is this stigma that eating disorders are something that only affect white women. And so people just don't really know what to look for. And I frankly was in industries that rewarded me for being thin. Everyone
Right.
loved how
Fashion.
thin I was, right? All the time.
Mhm.
I was told it was amazing.
Right.
And so I didn't want to lose it, but I also knew that in some level it was like killing me. Like it was incredibly difficult mentally. It was getting to be incredibly difficult physically. I, stopped getting a period. I would never eat anything. I was exercising 2-3 times a day. And so it was really like trying to get to that place of where I could feed myself like a normal person would, that my therapist was trying to get me to. And that's why she was like trying to introduce the concept of self-love, because she's like, if you love yourself, you will feed yourself. Like you need to treat yourself like you would treat someone you love. And she's like, if you have a baby, you wouldn't just be like, look at the baby cry and ignore it. You would be like, hey, baby, what do you need? Are you cold? Are you hungry? Are you sleepy? And you have to address those needs because you love the baby. You want the baby to survive. But I couldn't do that for myself for whatever reason. So she was like, we need to figure out how to help you do that for you.
Was writing Token Black Girl a part of that healing process for you?
I think it was kind of post healing that I was able to write the book, because I was able to gain perspective on, I think, the limitations that had prevented me from getting healing in the first place. So it felt very good to be able to write it. They were all things that I knew were true. They were things that I knew were true for a number of years, but I hadn't said. When you can be institutionalized in many ways. And I think I was very institutionalized by a lot of the institutions that I was associated with. And so being able to break free of that was very cathartic.
So were your parents involved in your healing process?
They were and they weren't. I hid a lot from my parents. My parents, I come from a very Black excellence kind of family. Everybody is, they're all have higher degrees, like Ivy League educated, athletic, attractive. So to fit in with the family, I felt like I knew what I needed to do. I knew what my role was. And, I never wanted to disappoint anyone. So I felt like admitting I was sick, admitting I was weak, admitting I needed help was kind of counter to that narrative. And even though my family is extremely supportive and they would have loved me regardless, they know everything now, our relationship hasn't changed. I just didn't feel like, I was like, wow, I can't be the one that is like not making it out of everybody. Look at everybody. I can't disappoint them. So I wanted to keep a lot from my parents, and I did. I think you can hide a lot from people you love.
That was something that I struggled with, because I've always thought that I fostered a good relationship with my daughter. And I know my mom felt that she fostered a good relationship with me, to where we should be able to just tell our, like my daughter I felt my daughter should be able to tell me whatever was on her mind, because I thought that I was making that safe space for her. And my mom probably thought that same thing about me, that she had created a safe space for me to talk to her about whatever. But just like you said, you don't want to disappoint them. You don't want to shock them. You don't want them to look at you differently. So there are certain things you just don't say. And then when it finally comes out, I'm like, because I know when my daughter finally told me things years later, I'm like, why didn't she ever tell me that? I felt like a failure, because I'm like, I thought that I had created a space for her to talk to me, and she hid these things from me, and I couldn't protect her. Yeah. So for me, that was a sobering moment. And I wonder, when your parents read your book, did they have that sobering moment? Was that something that they may have come and talked with you about?
Oh yeah. And it's been really interesting. I think that because the book is so vulnerable and people in my family have seen me be so vulnerable, they're opening up more too. I think it created a better pathway for everyone to just be a little bit more honest. And like you said, like my parents were always like, you can talk to us about anything. We won't think of you any different. But there was always still this fear that I really couldn't. And I think ultimately it has improved our relationship. But yeah, if I have kids one day, like I know they're going to struggle through their own stuff, and their stuff might not be my stuff. It might be totally different, and that's just kind of growing up and being a human.
Yeah, Rhonda and I have daughters that are close in age, and Rhonda, everything that you said is ditto. So, you think I grew up in a different time. My parents were different. When I grew up, you didn't really talk to your parents about personal. Yeah, they expected you to be an overachiever because of all the things they fought for. That's what I grew up with. We fought for you to be the best you can be, period. And whatever else, it wasn't even a topic of discussion. So
Sure.
I wanted my daughter to be able to talk to me about, things,
Mhm.
more so.
Yeah.
And it's still some stuff that she would, it's the same thing. Some things that I'm finding out years later that I didn't know. And I thought that, I felt like I was open, like she could tell me anything. I felt, but there's this thing, they don't want to disappoint you. And I remember feeling that with my parents too. I didn't want to disappoint them.
Yeah.
So, because, they sacrificed, and the thing there used to be, and I guess it still is in our community, where you have this thing where the ancestors did so much for you to be where you are, that you feel like you just need to suck it up or whatever, deal with whatever, because your ancestors would have been elated to have the opportunities that we have. But the opportunities do come with a cost. Especially, and Mary alluded to this, because Mary Evans, she said that the cultural isolation is real.
Yes.
In predominantly white spaces. It's real. And it's not something you can talk about to people who haven't been there, who haven't experienced it. But it's real, it's debilitating. It's soul crushing. That's
right.
I mean, so and then it really, what led me to be an entrepreneur at an early age, at 25, that's when I made the move, and I haven't looked back since, was I refused to be in those white spaces all day, every day anymore after I got to school. And the only way I was able to cope with it when I was at Georgetown is the last 2 years, I moved off campus. So I could at least have a break after my classes. I wasn't 24/7, but it is a soul crushing thing. And you can probably talk to yourself, and get through it. But why should you have to? No, that's
There you go. There you go.
Why should you have to, deal with that? And then need therapy, but you have to talk to somebody. You can talk to yourself or you can talk to a therapist. I did a lot of talking to myself. I really did.
Well, it sounds like you writing your book did a lot of good. It actually opened up conversation for you and your family.
It did. And I think it opened up a lot of conversation for other people too. And
Yeah.
I knew in writing this that other women had felt this and had gone through it. I was like, there's no way that we aren't having these same experiences. And what was crazy about the book getting released is that so many people who went to like boarding schools or some of the elite, like independent schools, had come to me and told me that they had some sort of overblown disciplinary action taken against them while they were a student at school. Like in my book, I write about how I was suspended from high school And, for so many years, that was shameful for me. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I did something so wrong. And I'm like, look, I did something wrong, but not any more so wrong than any of my other white peers. Like, it was like, kids make mistakes. Kids don't have like fully developed prefrontal cortex. They're gonna make rash and weird decisions. Like, right. So why is it that only certain people are given the space to develop and second chances, whereas like the Black students or the students of color are more often, taken out of that environment and then made to feel shame about it? So there were people who have been like, I've never talked about this. I didn't want to ever bring it up. And I was like, for many years, I never talked about it either. But I'm like, I had to, again, self-love. I had to allow myself to be someone who makes mistakes, because clinging to this really rigid view of perfection, that I was perfect, that I had to be perfect, was so incredibly damaging to me. And I think a lot of Black women feel that, especially in white spaces. You cannot mess up. You cannot say the wrong thing. You cannot do the wrong thing. You cannot wear the wrong thing. None of it. All of it, you have to show up as perfect all of the time. And it's like, that is exhausting. And it's also unrealistic, and it's not loving. So, I had to be like, I forgive myself for that. And, hopefully we cultivate more institutions that are properly inclusive, and that are like adapted to caring for students on an individual basis, rather than looking at them, as isolated or, problems.
Yeah, it's not a one-off, it's happening everywhere. I think it's worse for females, because, and I may be wrong about this, but I know from just my experience, the males in school, if they get involved in sports, and then so they can fit in that way, and then they don't have the pushback from the females, as white females. As a matter of fact, they become an object of affection for the white females, whereas the Black female doesn't. I mean, I think it's harder for the Black female. That's my personal opinion. I don't know. And you're in fashion, so I don't know. It's more of a women's industry. But what do you think about that?
Well, I think, in the axis of power, if we're looking at it like a grid, like being Black and female is like the complete absence of power, when being white and male represents the highest of the power axis that you could achieve. And so, there's a lot of factors that work against us that really get unaddressed. The patriarchy is very powerful. White supremacy is very powerful. And these systems feed into each other, and both of them subjugate Black women, right?
Yeah. So when you wrote your memoir, where did you start? Like, what part of your life did you start? Did you start from a small child experiences, or?
I actually started with writing about getting my hair done, because I got my first perm when I was 10 years old. And that was a very pivotal moment for me in my development, because it showed me that I could do something to alter my appearance, to make myself more acceptable, and more alike my friends. And
oh wow, I was just going to ask, was this your choice to get the perm?
Oh, I begged. It was my choice. I begged, please, please, please. I campaigned. Once I learned what it was, I said, please, can I get that? Please, please. And my mom finally broke down, and she was like, okay, whatever. Yeah.
Because I mean, well, by the time I got I think I had a perm when I was in elementary school, and then I got the Jerry curl.
I never had a Jerry curl.
Yes, I had the Jerry curl.
Let it pass.
And you have that moment when you have to cut all of your hair off to get the Jerry curl. So you have to walk around with short hair and put up with being called bald head until your hair grows out. And then when your hair grows out, then you're called greasy head, so I went through all of that.
Yeah.
But getting that relaxer for the first time, we didn't call them relaxers at first. We just called them perms.
Yeah.
But getting that perm so you can look like the girls around you, that's huge. And did you realize that that's what you were doing when you were that age? You just wanted to look like the girls around you?
Oh, yeah. And I always thought that, like, being able to like twirl your hair and play with your hair. And like, I always thought it was the most glamorous thing to like watch people put their hair up and like take it down. My mom was always like, when I send you to school, leave your hair alone. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. And I'm like, no, it's so glamorous to touch it. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted so bad to be able to participate in that ritual. I thought that's like, what being a woman was about, what being attractive was about. And I wanted to be able to access it.
Yes. And that's a big thing. And I think the way you're describing it now just sounds so mature, which is why I asked, did you realize that's what you were doing when you were younger? But I think it is. I think that same process went through your head at 10 years old because you wanted to have your hair nice and long and silky. I remember when we were kids, we would put the shirt or the towel on our heads just so we'd be able to do this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I didn't do the towel because I'm a little bit older than Rhonda. So I didn't do a towel on the head. I didn't know about that. But I did. This is what happened to me. I wore an afro until I went to college. That was what was popular. So, and I had long hair. So, and I had a big afro. So, but when I went to college, my white roommate, when I first got there, did I have my hair in an afro when I first got there? Or was it? I didn't have a perm till later. So I got my hair pressed. But I think when I got there, it was pressed. And then I washed it and then it was an afro. And my roommate was just undone. I liked your hair better straight. Who cares? It's not up to you. But yeah, she just came out. I liked your hair better when it was straight.
Of course she did.
Yeah. So, the hair thing is real, but one thing we get our revenge later because we don't have to do collagen and Botox and all of that. Our skin holds up well over time, and we don't just like look horrible. We don't just wrinkle up like a prune. We get our revenge later on, but it can be very debilitating. And you have to, I guess we need to support each other more as women. So we won't be isolated when these situations occur. We have somebody to talk to about real stuff that's happening,
Yeah.
Because those things are real.
It's very important, I think, to recognize the ways that white supremacy can infiltrate even the Black community. And I write about this in the book, particularly around the subject of hair. When I worked at BET, we would constantly, we had a story about, people and their natural hair. And I'm just like, it was feeding into this like fetishization of like, how women present and like obsessing over like seeing them undone, right? Like it would always be like Michelle Obama, natural hair on vacation. And I'm like, this is such a weird thing to be able to like make a headline. I'm like, this is not news, but like the way that it was our top performing story every time. And, I also write about this when talking about professional athletes, the expectation of them. Like Serena Williams has faced this criticism. People will say, oh, I hate her wigs. Why can't she get her hair together? I'm like, I want you to realize that she is a professional tennis player. She does not also owe you her hair. Same with Simone Biles and Gabby Douglas.
That used to get on my nerves. This girl is flipping through the air on national TV and you're worried about how her hair looks.
Yeah.
Simone Biles is literally so good of a gymnast that like she gets penalized for being as good as she is. It's too dangerous for other people who don't have the talent to attempt the things that she does. And Twitter is up in arms about her edges and her ponytail. And I'm like, first of all, there are standards in American gymnastics that dictate exactly what hairstyles you have. And those standards were made not with any Black girls in mind. So she adheres to the rules of her sport. But even beyond that, what she's doing, she doesn't also owe you attractiveness, prettiness. Like it's like it's an absurd thing. So I think that my hope is that more women recognize that and say, you know what, we don't need to be talking about this girl's thing. It's like such a small percentage of people's job in the world to be pretty. And even those people deserve time off sometimes, right? Like even models need time off. Like it's not like it's like something that has to happen 24/7, right? Like these women do not owe you their beauty and also their incredible talent. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wish we could talk longer. Unfortunately,
Well,
it's 9
we
o'clock.
can talk longer because our other person hasn't logged on yet.
Okay, well, let's keep talking. Well, I did want to ask you, since we have a little bit more time, have you been, has the book allowed you to open a platform to speak? Because what you're saying, there are so many young women who need to hear this. So have you been able to do more speaking engagements?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I just was at North Carolina A&T with the Honey Pot Company, which is a Black-owned brand that started for women. And I spoke at a college in Texas as well, in San Antonio, the Alamo University Network. And I've been also doing a lot of private company engagements. But I love talking to academic people because they really like books and they really like to read. Fashion people don't really read that much. So it's a little weird sometimes. But I really do like going to school. And I really hope, because I spent so much time working in magazines and unfortunately contributing to low self-esteem for women, highlighting insecurities, telling them they need to buy this, do this, wear this to feel better, be better, look better. And I have a lot of guilt around that because it was all made up. Like none of it was really real. And so I want to try and repair some of that damage, which is why I'm really passionate about talking to younger girls to make sure that I catch them before any of that stuff really takes hold, so that they can really establish better self-esteem, more self-love, so they can understand that they don't need to participate in this.
It's sad when you look at advertising because they have to do it. They know in order to sell makeup, sometimes you have to play on a person's insecurities about being attractive. In order to sell hair products, you have to play on the insecurities. And it's a sad thing, but it's a part of advertising. And I feel like, this is where we do have to balance to let people know that, you are still beautiful without all of the makeup on or without the weave down to your behind. Because we're setting a standard now where everybody feels like they have to look, well, I say now, but every generation has had it in some way. But right now we're making it seem like everybody has to look like the girls on Instagram.
Yeah, see, before social media, you still had pressure, but it wasn't worldwide pressure. Now the pressure is worldwide. And so that's why so many teenagers who are on there end up in depression and with eating disorders, like you said, or just comparing themselves to other people. We compared ourselves to basically just the people in our neighborhood or our high school. But now you're comparing yourself to an impossible standard. Someone around the world somewhere, and we have to practice more self-love. And that gets back to what you were talking about with your therapist. Now, somebody, Bernita Francine is one of our viewers. She says she was sent home from 8th grade Catholic school thanks to her big bush, her afro. So now I was fortunate. All of my my formative years were either in all Black schools or mostly Black schools. So I didn't really have the pressure of the white majority dominating until I got to Georgetown. That was, I said, I went through a lot in school, but we were more cohesive. I want to say it wasn't, and the Black people, there were so many numbers in high school that we dominated all the social stuff. So we didn't have problems with the white students, even though it was about 60-40 when I was in high school. And then I had my community, my neighborhood, very middle class, but it was a Black neighborhood. It didn't start off Black. We were the first Black family that moved in, but then 5 years later, it was almost all Black. Mm-hmm. And then my dad was a pastor, so I had church. So I had a lot of encouragement. I had a lot of support in different places. Mm-hmm. But when I got to Georgetown, I had none. I had nothing. I was mm-hmm. removed from my community. I didn't have my church community. I didn't have my parents supporting me. I didn't have my high school people. Mm-hmm. I didn't have my teachers that, encouraged me. I didn't have any of that. It was all like just rich white people that didn't have any connection to Black people other than their maids. And I even had one person tell me they had one Black girl in their high school, but nobody talked to her. Can you imagine how she felt? Can you imagine that? You're the only Black person at the school and nobody will talk to you. And you're a teenager. Can you imagine?
So lonely.
Yeah.
It is lonely.
And then she just acted like, my roommate who said it. My roommate I had a white roommate the first freshman year. She just said it like it was no big deal. Like nobody talked to her. And before I went, I sent her a letter and told her I was Black. I knew she wasn't because her name was Italian. And I told her I was Black. So, because I didn't want to get there and then they meet me and then it's, they don't want her to have a Black roommate. So I let her know up front so it wouldn't be a shock. And we were fine most of the time, but they would just say stuff that was just ridiculous and racist and didn't think anything about it, It was
well, this is why I said that your book is important, and being able to speak to young Black girls is important. Do you have are you planning a second book?
I'm planning a second book, but the second book is fiction.
It's okay. It's another way to tell your story.
Yeah, it is. Yes. Or another story, but how I need to get a copy of your book. How thick is it?
It is, I don't know, 220 pages, something like that.
Okay. So it's like a standard size. It's not like 300 pages.
Yeah.
But now when you worked at BET, was that part of the fashion industry work?
Yes, it was. So I was the style director there. So I oversaw all fashion, beauty, and lifestyle content for the website.
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm. That had to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Did you learn a lot? Just being able to learn a lot more about fashion. Did it open your eyes to more things?
Well, what was interesting was because I had worked at so many legacy white publications and then moved to a legacy Black publication who objectively had a larger audience and wider reach because it was a different medium than print magazines, which were kind of on the decline. It was very interesting, how I was treated by the industry in general. So all of a sudden I stopped getting invites to things.
Wow.
People would, take me off of lists for press emails. It was crazy. I knew that I was being excluded because I had just been included, because I worked at a white publication, but all of a sudden I was seeing how much the industry just devalued Black media and they didn't think it was important. And now I'm on the, other end of that.
And sadly, it still happens to this day. I mean, I work in public relations, when I'm not doing this. But when I look at our media lists, there is not a lot of Black media, very little Black media on the media list. And so being a person of color, I've tried to make it a point to, if I find out that there's some Black media out there who's not just doing entertainment, but trying to do hard-hitting stories, I want to include them on what it is that we're sending out. Because they deserve to be able to tell those stories just as anybody else. And they're not only reporting on Black subjects.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know what? It kind of makes me sad that it seems like in many ways we're standing still. We're running in place. I didn't know that this was still a thing as strongly as you've described, which it doesn't sound like it's any different than what I went through. That's what, I actually, though, when my daughter went to the private school she went to, and she was going through things with the students there, I told the headmaster, I said, I went to Georgetown and it was years ago, decades ago. And I thought my daughter might be going through some different things, but she's going through the same things. That's what I told the headmaster, who's white, of course, but it's the same things that I went through. It's not even an upgrade or different. It's not even like a variation. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you just verified it too, that the same things are still happening. Only it may be worse now because the expectation is that it's not, or it shouldn't be, I think things haven't changed in a lot of institutions as much as people may think they have changed.
Yes, that's very true.
So what's next for you with your fiction book?
Well,
do you know what it's going to be about? How far have you gotten into it?
I do know what it's going to be about.
Okay.
Actually, I have a lot of ideas kicking around, but I don't have a lot of time. Like, I keep overworking myself and overbooking myself. So the thing that's immediately next is that I'm taking a 10-day sabbatical. I'm not going to do any work. I'm not going to take any meetings. I'm just going to rest.
You need that.
I'll get better. And then I will talk to my agent. My agent is like, last year, she was like, okay, so what are we doing for our next book? And I'm like, okay, here's my ideas. And, the way that the book process works, especially with fiction, is that like, you usually don't sell a book unless it's the whole book. Like, you can sell a nonfiction book on proposal, which means that you make a 40-page document that basically says like, here's why I'm an expert in whatever subject I'm trying to write about. And then you submit that, and someone either says, yes, this checks out, she can write about it, we'll give her the money, and then you write the book. That's how nonfiction works. But fiction, usually you have to write the entire book first, and then they'll consider it, and then they'll say, okay, we'll buy it. So It's like, you need a lot of time. And publishing, like this literary publishing, is a really slow industry. So even if I finished it tomorrow, this book can't come out until 2025.
For 2 years. Yeah. That's why I self-publish, because I don't have time to wait on that whole.
That's why I self-publish. If I write a book tonight and I want it to get published tomorrow, I'm gonna do it.
Right. Exactly. And I can set my own date, and then I don't have to wait for validation from somebody else, and then for them to cut up my work, like cut stuff out that I want in, or tell me this won't work or whatever. Let me decide. Let me decide what'll work. But see, because their money's involved, they get to make the decision. And so that is true, that the process is slower.
Well,
Yeah.
I am
Now, did
happy
you
for you.
self-publish this book?
No, I didn't.
Oh, who did you do it through?
It's through Little A, which is an Amazon book imprint.
That
Oh,
that
that's
was what I
right.
was
That's what
going.
it was.
That's what I
Okay.
wanted to get to
Okay,
was
yes.
how you were able to get into that process, because there are a lot of authors who have gone through the Amazon process and they feel lost in the sauce, but you were able to find a lot of success working with Amazon. So how did that process work for you? How did you get started?
So the first thing that you do is you need an agent if you want to get a traditional book deal. And so I didn't know any agents. I had some friends that wrote books, and I talked to a few of their agents, and they were very nice, but ultimately, like, none of them were my person. So I cold emailed 87 agents.
Wow.
I made an Excel spreadsheet.
87.
That's the
I
exact
cold
number
emailed
for
all of
sure.
them. And then I took meetings after that, and the agent that I ended up going with, like, she's really amazing. She actually went to a boarding school in Connecticut, and she was like, I know exactly the world you're talking about. I know I can help you. And she's taught me a lot and shown me a lot about the book process. And then ultimately my book went to what's called an auction, which means that there were multiple offers from multiple publishers, and Amazon won out. And then from there, what's nice about working with Amazon is that they're very innovative in terms of like what they're willing to do, because they're like a little bit newer. Some of the other older publishing houses are just, they're very traditional in the way that they approach things. Their marketing is very traditional. Like, I feel like we've been really good partners because I don't know a lot about books, but I know a lot about selling people things. And so Amazon was very open to like hearing the things that I wanted to do. And that allowed me to like do a lot of interesting things, and not just, I did a lot of like book store things. I did a lot of book fair or book fest things, which has been really amazing. But I'm like, readers can be anywhere. And I am a reader who is everywhere, but I don't really spend any time in bookstores, and I love books. So I'm like, where can we find people who are like me? Like, I exercise. So I hosted an all Black Pilates class, and we had the book there. And I'm like, I don't think that that's something that some of these other publishing houses would have been open to. So I felt really lucky. And it was a really, really good experience. So I hope that they're able to publish my next book too.
Okay, so
so
little
you have to basically shop your next book to them too, so it wasn't like a multi-book deal.
Right. So they have what's called an option clause. So they have first option, and they can either accept it or they can pass on it. But I have to show them what I want to do first.
Okay, so it's called Little A, and from what I was reading, it's a new arm of Amazon, or fairly new.
Yeah.
Where they're actually getting into a more traditional publishing style. Because they have the self-publishing arm, which is KDP.
Yes.
But the Little A is traditional publishing, which I didn't realize that it was traditional, in that you still needed an agent.
Oh yeah, you need an agent. I had an editor. I had two editors because my editor had a baby in the middle of me writing the book. So she went on maternity leave. So I had another editor, and then she came back too. So I had two people work on it with me.
So how long was the process between you getting did you have the book finished when you got the book deal? Because you said that it was fiction. I mean, nonfiction. So it's a memoir. So did you have the book finished when you shopped it when you proposed it to the agent, the 87 agents? And how many responded? How many out of 87 responded?
Oh, I would say like a good 30 something responded, which is, I think, pretty good. I did have the book finished because I didn't trust myself. I'd never written a book before. I think maybe the most like published thing I'd ever written is probably like 4,000, 5,000 words, and the book is 96,000 words, which is like a massive jump. And it was a very big undertaking. And the thing that a lot of people don't know about publishing is like, when they give you a book advance, if you do not meet your deadline, you have to pay them the money back, which is really scary. So I was like, I want to know that I could do it. So I finished the book. I did it kind of backwards. I wrote the book and then I wrote the proposal.
Okay.
And then we sold it on proposal, but I had already had the book.
Okay. Okay. And then, yeah, a lot of people don't realize, and some people, they don't realize that when you get a book deal with traditional publishers and you get an advance, did Lil A give you an advance?
They did, yes.
Okay. Then your advance is against future royalties.
Yes.
Which means you may not see a penny for 2 years, because it's going to take 2 years for the book to come out almost. I mean, 1 year if you're lucky, but
yeah. And then you have to out earn your advance before you get
right. So you have to sell enough books to make the royalties to equal or exceed,
or else you're going to be writing for free,
or
you're going to be promoting for free
for a long time. So that's why you don't quit your day job.
No. I know. That's why there's not a lot of full-time authors, and it's really sad. It's really hard to be a full-time author.
Yeah, even people who have lots and lots of books, a lot of them will still keep their day job just because it's job security, and it's more predictable because you really don't know exactly how much your royalty check is going to be. I know was it Frances Ray, may she rest in peace. She told me one time she got a royalty check for 26 cents. And I'm like, it costs more to write the check than she got in the check. But it can be, you have to rely on them telling you how many books sold against how many were returned, and the book.
That's why it's good to have. It's good to have a publisher who's on the up and up, because they can tell you anything and you really don't have a way to prove that they're not telling you the truth.
Yeah, and it's real difficult to even with the ones who are the big publishers, you still don't really know. I mean, they tell you what you sold, but do you really ever really know? Because they can have an algorithm, they could have an algorithm in the computer. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I'm just saying. You could create an algorithm that, changes the numbers. So, I mean, you really trust. I guess they do get audited, but, how do you know who the auditor is and all of that? It's just, I self-publish, even self-publishing, you still don't necessarily know, but you can at least sell your own books and make the money that way. That, you have control over that. Yeah. But then you don't have the distribution. So, you give something to get something. That's just the nature of it.
There's a lot of different pathways to doing this.
There are. And there are authors doing all sorts of things. And your case about how you went about doing it as a first-time author, it was just really amazing. And thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. Now, do you have a copy of your book with you?
I do. It's over here.
Okay, can you show us the cover?
Of course. This is what it looks like.
Okay.
Gorgeous.
Okay.
I like the cover.
Is it hardcover or paperback?
This is the paperback, but there's also a hardcover version, which is also beautiful. And
you also have audio, don't you?
Yes, I have.
Did you read it yourself?
I did.
Oh, okay. Good for you. Now, is there a doll on the front? Is that like a doll?
Yes, it's like a Barbie.
Okay. And did you decide on the cover, or did they decide?
That was our one kind of hiccup, but it was ultimately resolved. It was a fight to get the cover to where it is now, but I'm very happy with it. And yes, they get final say on the cover.
Right.
That's kind of the deal.
That's the way that works.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, like publishers want to sell the most books possible. They're not trying to sabotage, this, but it felt very personal to me. So I really wanted, I did not want to be on the cover of the book, but I wanted it to, because I wanted to invite other people to see themselves in the story. And so I really do like how it turned out.
Yeah, I do understand. I mean, it it is very personal. And I mean, I remember having a cover and I was like, I hate this cover. This is not what it's not translating to what the story is about. And I didn't win that battle, unfortunately.
Yeah, it happens. A lot of people don't win it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's okay. You have a great book.
Thank
You do,
And
and
yeah,
congratulations
but a
on
powerful
it.
story.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll be on the lookout for when your fiction comes out.
Yes, soon.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Danielle, and thank you for extending your time with us. We
Yes.
appreciated it,
Thank you for
and
having me.
you had a very, very amazing story.
Thank you. Appreciate you both.
Hey,
Okay,
thank
you have a
a
great
great evening, and best wishes to you and everything else that you endeavor to do.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
bye-bye. Hope you feel better. Okay, so did anybody else win a book? Or do I need to hold these over for next week?
Well, I know somebody tried to answer a question that had already been answered, but I don't see a new answer.
A new answer now. So what we will do is we will hold these books over.
What do you think we
Yeah.
should repeat the questions really quickly, or do you want them to
Okay,
just
we'll do
scroll
that,
up?
and then we'll bring on our final guest. Because
Yeah.
she's a little bit early. The third guest, I don't know what this was a different kind of night. But that's why we're flexible.
Yeah. See, Bernita's asking what the question is. So let's just go ahead and repeat the ones that weren't answered yet.
Okay.
Vanessa's was answered.
Okay, so we have 3 books that we have to give away. This one here, we've given away some other hard copies, and we have a few more left. But tonight, the question for this, The Family Business 2 by Carl Weber. The question is, by day, the Duncan family runs a high-end car dealership, but by night, they do something else. What is it that they do by night? That's a question for that. Okay. This book it's an advanced reading copy of Destiny's Child, The Untold Story by Matthew Knowles. The question for this book is, name one of the original Destiny's Child members whose last name was Roberson or Robertson. What is her first name? So there were 6 original Destiny's Child members. We all know Beyonce, Kelly Rowland, and Michelle Williams, but there were 3 other originals, and one of them had the last name Roberson. What was her first name? And the final book is by Iris Bowling. It's called The Society of Intellectual Beings. And the question for this book is, Wade Tyson, who's the main character, his parents were convicted of multiple murders how many years ago? So in the synopsis of the book, it tells you how many years ago his parents were convicted of murder. Wade Tyson, who's the main character. So those are the 3 books. Anyone can win who's watching and answers them correctly. So our next guest, our final guest for tonight is Natashia Deon. Natashia Deon was a NAACP Image Award nominated author for I think it was for the previous year, not this year. She was nominated in 2022. And for her book, The Perishing. If my information is correct, that's true. So anyway, but she has other books as well. And Natasha she's been nominated twice. That's one thing for the literary award for the NAACP Image Award. And she's also a practicing criminal attorney. We've had several attorneys on that write books too, all kinds.
I like when attorneys write books because they can tap in.
Well, and they have to write a lot anyway for their jobs.
And then she's a criminal attorney. She has some stories to tell.
So Natashia Deon, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV. And y'all know you're connecting your audio, so we'll wait a second for that.
Yeah.
But you have had a lot of recognition with your your books, the best debut novel by the American Library Association Black Caucus. You're a PEN America Fellow. You have other fellowship awards and residencies at Yale Prague's creative writing program. You've done a lot, and your personal essays have been featured in the New York Times, Harper's, the Los Angeles Times, Harper's Bazaar. So you've had a lot going on.
She's very well established.
And you were U.S. delegate to Armenia. Yeah. Now that's like out of the ordinary.
I feel like we need to be honored to be in her presence.
You've done so much. So
I think
so
she's
that
having
means
an
that
issue.
whatever device she had, it didn't click over. And that happened. So hopefully she'll log back on.
Well, maybe we embarrassed her by lauding all of her accomplishments. Yes.
She just had so much that she's been doing. And then one of them, Grace, her book Grace was named the best book by the New York Times. And that was the one she had the best debut novel designation.
Very nice.
ALA. So it's some great writing going on out there. It's very exciting that so many people are writing and writing well and
yes,
telling their stories, or just telling their stories or stories in general. This is some really good work that's being published.
I just like that people are taking the literary industry seriously, because there are so many people who seem to they want to treat the literary industry as a way to come up or a side hustle. And sometimes they don't care about what they're writing because they know somebody's going to buy it. But when people are actually putting their all into their books and they take the time to make sure it's done well, I love it. And I just finished reading Connie Briscoe's book, Sisters and Husbands. That was interesting.
Oh, wow. That's a throwback.
Yeah, that was a throwback. But I was like, I said, it's on my Audible. I'm going to go ahead and listen. And I have a couple other books that I need to catch up on. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now.
Mine too.
I think she got it.
She okay. I think we got her now. We just need you to unmute so we can hear
back.
You.
I'm so sorry about that.
No, it happens. It happens.
Sometimes the device doesn't kick in. So welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you for having me. I'm just so excited, Gwen and Dr. Rhonda. I'm just like, this is exciting. Still in Black History Month, even though it's all month or all year.
All year.
Yeah.
Yes. So, well, thank you for being a guest on the show. We and congratulations on your many accolades, including your 2 NAACP Image Award nominations. We got it frozen. You froze up a little bit.
Oh, wait, she's back.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's the storm.
Oh, you have weather where you are?
She froze again. Yeah, I think she did say something about a storm, though.
Yeah. I wonder where she is. Where she's from.
Sorry.
It's okay. We're gonna work through it.
So are you in California?
I'm in California. I'm in the LA area.
Is it still snowing there?
It's snowing in some parts, but not everywhere. But it's like everything is just out of control right now. Like the roads aren't ready for rain and snow. The internet is not ready for rain and snow. So I'm hoping that it'll stay now that we're back.
Okay.
Wow.
It's still a little intermittent, but we're going to move forward, and I think we'll be fine. So tell us, how did you start writing before you became a lawyer or after you became a lawyer?
I've always been a writer. Ever since I was little, with all my brothers and sisters, I would make up games for them to play. And I would have to have stories and things that went along with the games that I was playing. But my family, they're from Alabama. So when they left in the 70s, the tail end of the Great Migration, they, being a writer wasn't an option. I was going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer.
Right,
so
because those are real jobs.
Yeah, those are real jobs. Real ones. At least the pay is consistent.
Right.
Well, hopefully. And that
Um,
was important, security, job security
yeah,
was important. I mean, it still is, but it was very important to that generation.
yeah. So that's how I was a writer. I became a writer after, but I chose, I do criminal defense work. So I petitioned the courts to grant clemency to people who are incarcerated to get them out of prison. Most people understand it as the Kim Kardashian. She goes in, asks somebody, and someone comes out of prison. But but there's other people working on the ground, just
Hmm.
trying to bring people, I call it, give people second chances, and also sort of, I don't know, it's because I don't believe that there's throwaway people, and some people we just get an opportunity. We're blessed enough to go in and save from the penal system. So
Did you ever were you ever a court appointed lawyer? Were you ever public like
I
that?
was never a public defender. I was always private counsel. So I worked for a very long time. Um, in Actually, I started in insurance defense. So I did that for almost a decade. And then
Hmm.
I moved over to criminal law because I was working with people, especially people who were already charged with crime. So I was erasing records,
Hmm.
applying to get to get rights back, like the voting right back, because you lose that as a felon, or you did it one time in California, and also get back rights like gun rights and things like that. So that was something I was interested in on the side. And then just case after case, because Black people especially are underrepresented. So usually our choice is public defender
Right.
or go on your own.
And we
So
can't afford the fancy lawyers, or the lawyer teams.
yeah, so that's what I did, and that's what I've been doing for the last maybe 12 years. So yeah.
So
Okay.
when did you decide to go into fiction?
Um, you know, it's the same thing. It's writing stories, all kinds of stories. And also with fiction, you can hide behind so many truths. I
Yeah.
always say, like when you write nonfiction, it's like there's just this little string that you're pretending that covers you. But for me, it wasn't that I didn't want to tell the truth. It was because even when you have the best intentions, um, once your book is out in the world, people are judging not only what happened, but they're either hating on the people involved in it, and all of a sudden those people are involved in your book, or they're loving the people that you're writing about. I don't know. So
Right.
fiction gave me more protection.
Well, yeah, because you can, even though truth is stranger than fiction, you can
Uh-huh.
always hide behind the fact that the characters are fictionalized. So
Ex-
even though they can be real people, because Ron and I both write, and I know when I
Mhm.
write, some of my characters are just made up, but some of them are real people. But I don't name them the name, but a real person comes to mind when I create the character. And it may be the person's personality, or it could be their physical attributes, either one. You
Mhm.
envision a character and then you give them a description, and you're seeing somebody and you're able to just describe those details based on a real person, but they have a different name. So yeah, it does give you more protection, because
Yeah,
you can always say it's made up, it's not real. And if the
yeah.
person claims it's them, then shame on them.
And they will claim that's me, isn't it? That's me. No,
Yep.
no.
Yep.
So tell us about the perishing. That's the one you I think that's the last one that you won the Image Award. I mean, you got the nomination for the Image Award. Was the What
Yes,
was the other book that you were nominated
the
for?
other book was Grace, my first novel.
Okay,
So
so both of those got the NAACP Image Award nominations.
yeah, and Grace also got the Black Caucus of the American Library Association,
Okay,
best book for like the New York Times and places like that. But
okay.
The Perishing was closest to my heart because it's more who I am as a writer and as a person, in the way that I don't think linearly. I think in terms of patterns, and seeing the repetition, the repeating of patterns in history, in our lives, so it's not just people often say, when we're dealing with violence, domestic violence, for instance, there's like this circle of violence, but there's a circle of violence that's even wider than in an intimate relationship or a close relationship. So I
Yes.
see patterns, and it helps me to sort of see through the world, and they're not always right after the other. So for me, the perishing was, it allowed me, by using fiction as a tool, to tell the story that I wanted to tell in the order that I wanted to tell it, with characters I wanted to resurrect from the past and be able to put it all there. So The Perishing is the book that's closest to me, as an artist. And I
Mm.
was fortunate that my publisher was just like, you know what, just go for it. Let us deal with the marketing. We love this book. We want you to go for it. So I was appreciative for that.
So is The Perishing a contemporary book or is it historical?
It's a historical, so it's based in the 1930s Los Angeles.
Wow.
So
Okay.
so it's between the
Okay.
two world wars, World War I and World War II, and it's told by a girl, a Black girl named Lou, who wakes in an alley and she doesn't know who she is. And it really is, so during the story, what we know is one principle: that she's lived before, she's had other lives, she's always Black but not always a woman. So
Mm.
it spans, so it's just before World War One, that, but it's mainly in between the two world wars, and it's about how Black people made it in Los Angeles. Los Angeles used to be called the Black Beverly Hills, right? South Central LA. Let me be specific. And W.E.B. Du Bois said, he's never seen a better situated group of Black people than in LA, and we lost all of that. So South Central, as you know, has the reputation of violence and everything else. So it talks about how that happened, how we went from here to here, and not just in LA, but everywhere, where in most of the nation, it was only something like 11% of Black people own their homes. In LA, it was much higher. It was in its 60s. 60%. We owned our homes, no mortgages, because we couldn't get them, for one. But it was a very high percentage um, of home ownership, generational wealth, when we talk about things like that. And basically, it's a mystery, because she has to figure out who she is and how she got there. And she ends up in a foster home.
Wow. Now, are you from California?
I'm from California. My parents are Alabama, but I'm 100% LA.
Okay, so they
And so you're-
migrated to California.
I was just about to say that your parents are part of the Great Migration.
Yeah. So it's a whole different experience when you're dealing with parents from the South and all your friends are from LA. It's like a different way of being raised, a different way of seeing the world. Even kindness is different. So
Well, no, that you got a good upbringing, that Southern upbringing, you can't beat it.
Nope.
Yeah. It doesn't always transfer everywhere because, in the South, people speak to each other. I mean, even if it's just a nod or whatever.
Right.
And that's not true everywhere. For sure.
Now, sometimes if you say hi to people outside of the South, they look at you like you're crazy. Like,
Yeah.
why are you talking this?
Yeah. So yeah.
I visited Birmingham not long ago, and the people in the CVS were saying hi to me, and it scared me because I didn't know them. So I was just like, whoa, I wasn't ready for that. Wait, do it again. Do it again.
Yeah, most of the Great Migration was to the North or the Midwest. It wasn't as much to the West Coast, probably from a distance standpoint. I don't know. I mean, it was more miles away. And so then the people will be miles away from family. And I don't think the trains and all that, it wasn't as accessible.
Some of them wanted to be miles away from family, so they went to California.
That was us.
Yeah, and some went to Oregon. I know some Black people who migrated to Oregon from Texas,
Wow.
and it wasn't a lot of Black people, but there were Black people who left. I know from Texas to Oregon. Now I'm sure they came from other places, but there was something about Texas, and I think it was not in Houston where I am, or even Dallas, more like in the Panhandle area, that the vast area of emptiness in Texas where it's not much there. Which actually is a lot of places like that in Texas, because you can drive, once you go to the big 5 cities, which is Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, and then El Paso's big too, but it's all the way on the other side. But driving across the state, once you leave those cities, it's just ranches, cows for miles.
The internet is just horrible in the store.
Well, we
So
wanted to hear about your books.
yeah, and so you told us about the perishing, and is that it behind you? It looks like it's
Yeah,
behind you.
yeah.
Can you bring it forward just so we can get more detail on the cover?
It's like it's backwards, but yes, there it
Okay.
is. And
Okay, so it's a mystery.
it's a mystery, and I can tell you they sell it as a what do they call it? Like a supernatural, not really supernatural, but whatever word they use right now.
It sounds a little bit like Tananarive Dew's work, like in
Oh
that
yeah, that's a
the
good
genre, that
comparison.
realm, right? in
Yeah.
that. Mhm.
Yeah, we keep getting cut off. We're gonna have to do this again.
Okay. Well, before we go, we still want to hear about Grace. We want to hear about what Grace is about. And then Ron and I are both curious about you being a delegate to Armenia. So
I don't know if we're gonna get that answer tonight. She's frozen again.
well, no, her face is moving.
There we go.
I know, I'm back. I'm so
Okay.
okay. So Grace is about 3 outcast women on the eve of the Civil War fighting the battle of their lives. So it's not a slave story, it's a mother-daughter story. So it's about the mother who, in the opening, she's on the run from slavery and she tries to make a life with these 2 other women.
Grace is the Civil War setting, and I did hear you say one of the people was Hispanic, was it? Latina?
Yeah,
And the
right.
other one
I heard
was
that
Jewish.
part.
The other one was Jewish.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
wanted them to be able to work together, and all be outcasts for different reasons and survive during that time. And not only survive, but thrive in their own way. It doesn't happen for a lot of the characters, but I wanted it to be an adventure. And I thought it was, because I didn't want it to, and I say adventure in that it's a time during slavery, but for all of us, even in our worst time, there are moments of joy. So it was important for me to find that joy and connection and sisterhood that we have, especially Black women, but other women who are outcasts and marginalized.
So why do you write historical? What attracted you to that?
Yeah, I love history. Like we are right now sitting here, Gwen, Dr. Lawson, we are sitting here. We are the dream, right? Even though it doesn't feel like it, we were the dream for our ancestors.
Yes.
If only, like we're it. We're,
Yes.
so it's hard to like, doctor, what? Writer Gwen, what? Like all of this. It's unimaginable. So I wanted to be able to tell their stories in a way that they couldn't at that time.
Yes.
They had to work. It wasn't important. Their stories weren't important. So I get to sit with the past all the time and just say, okay, what is it that I need to tell? So that's what's important to me. And that's why I write historical. I don't know if I'll ever write present tense, but I definitely want to keep writing historical. So right now I'm writing World War II for my next book. So I'm kind of going through time.
Okay.
Because we deserve that. We deserve that attention.
Right.
Imagine how amazing
We're just starting to have our stories from World War II told.
Right.
Yeah.
in recent years, we're just starting to be recognized for the contributions that we made during World War II and even World War One.
That's right. That's right. And that's important because it changes the narrative. Instead of
Right.
us just being sort of, you know, just in somebody's backpack almost while they did all the great things and we're just like chilling in the back.
Right.
It's like we're finally stepping into the light. And I felt privileged to be able to shine a light that God
Yeah, it's
allows me.
time for us to get out of the supporting cast role,
Right.
Mhm.
put
Right.
ourselves in the leading roles,
I agree.
Amen.
I agree.
Teach.
because we've got the things our ancestors did to get us here. It's a miracle. It's miraculous. It's really almost unheard of in the span of time
Yeah.
where they came from just like not even being a human being and not having any rights or anything, but they still could dream and imagine and strategize, and plan
Yes.
and hope. They didn't lose hope. And
No.
Mhm.
what they were facing, a normal human would lose hope, but they didn't. And some of it is that we are the offspring of the people who survived the Middle Passage. Those people had superior strength. They were spiritually superior. They were psychologically superior because they had to be to survive the Middle Passage. So we should be proud of where we are based on where we've been, but we still have a lot more to do. And a lot of it is more centered around self-confidence than anything else. We have to really be confident in ourselves
Right.
and where we want to go and take the bull by the horns and not wait for anybody
I
to,
hear that. I
I
hear that
like
is
that.
so
that
tell
is
us about being a delegate to Armenia. We don't have that much time left, but I'm just really intrigued by this.
yeah, so was I. It was under the Trump administration, 2017. I was excited to go to Armenia and I had to do a lot of research about Armenia before I went because I didn't want to be there and not know what I was talking about. I needed to also, so I interviewed other Armenians. I was only there for a couple of weeks and I remember day one, we landed after almost 24 hours.
Ooh.
Mm.
And I remember sitting in our embassy and I had a banana in front of me and something else. And I remember them saying, okay, we need to tell you all the rules, the to-dos about Armenia, what you can do, what you can't do. And they said, Natasha, we want you to do the TV segment. So you'll go around to different networks, talk to them about the US and what we were doing, which is the reconciliation, working on reconciliation between Turkish and Armenian students. So we were doing writing programs. And I was like, okay. I was like, all right. I said, I can get dressed. I could be ready for TV in a little while. Will it be in English? They were like, yeah. Well, here's one of the rules. You can't say anything about the Armenian genocide.
Mm.
You can't say those two words. And I
Mm.
remember I looked around and looked at my banana. I don't know why I remember that banana, but I was like, I'm sorry. I can't do that. I was like, there is no way I'm going to do to the Armenian people what our government does to me. I said, we're not going to
Mm.
fight on anybody and any truth. I said, I'm honored to be here. I really am. I said, but all the black people you called to be here, there was only three of us. I was the only black person. And I was just like, of all the black people to call, I'm the wrong black person. I said, because I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to deny something that they're fighting to be recognized. And it wasn't until last year was the Armenian genocide recognized by the United States. So 4 years later it was. And so they had to have all these meetings and finally they were like, okay, it's okay, Natasha, you go, no, don't worry, no one will ask you. So we'll tell the interviewers not to ask you about the conflict between Armenia and Turkey. I said, well, if anyone does, I'm going to call it Armenian genocide. I said, so, and so it was just, and that was day one on the ground. And for me, meeting Armenian people, being part of that world, it was just so beautiful and so welcoming. And I felt like I had a chance to stand for something while I was there. I wasn't just sightseeing. And to me, that was, I just felt so blessed to be there. That's what it felt like, blessed.
Yeah, I met an Armenian man once, and he told me that their genocide didn't get the recognition. And this was years ago when I met him. I want to say 25 years ago. It was a long time, because I didn't even know about the Armenian genocide till he told me about it. He said that they don't get the recognition.
Yeah. A
I can
lot of
believe
people.
that's sad, actually.
It is sad. So, history is written by the victors, and
Right.
that's unfortunate. That's
Yeah.
why we need to write our own stories, because the future
Mhm.
generations need to hear it from us.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So I'm just, for all of us as we write, we could just got to keep on going.
Yes, we do. Well, we're at the end of our time, Natasha, and what we're going to do when we send you the file of the interview, our tech people will put it together, so it won't be broken up for every time that you logged on. So
Oh, great.
yeah, I want to make sure that let you know that. And congratulations on your success with your books. And I look forward to getting at least one of them. My to be read shelf is just, it's overflowing. But some books that I hear the storyline, I'm like, I have to get that one. Even if I don't get to it or get to it right away, I still need to have it in my library. So when I get to, because I'm constantly reading. So but I love to have good books that I can read and share with other people.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you
these
so much.
definitely sound like great books. I'm looking forward
They
to
do.
reading them as well.
They do.
Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you, Gwen. Thank you, Dr. Lawson. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for joining us.
have a
Thank
great evening and continued success.
Thank you so much. You too.
Okay,
Take
good
care.
night. Well, thank you all for tuning in to our show this week. And we're looking forward to another amazing show. We had a couple of challenges, but
It
we're
happens.
flexible and we make it work. And we appreciate and love you all for tuning in and supporting the show and supporting the authors that appear on the show.
Absolutely.
So we will see you next week. It'll be March 7th, and we will have an amazing lineup for you. And thank you for tuning in. I am Gwen Richardson signing off for tonight.
And I'm Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Have a wonderful evening and a great night.
Thank you for tuning in, and join us next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for another edition of Black Authors Matter TV.